section, duty to vote, conflicts of interest. When a question is taken, every council member shall vote, but no member shall vote on a subject in which he or she has a conflict of interest as set forth in the Code of Iowa. And Dave, you probably need to improve the language. Just think of, as defined by the Iowa Code section dealing with conflicts of interest. But understanding that you are supposed to vote unless you have a conflict of interest. In some cities, you're going to have problems with a council member who doesn't want to vote, just wants to pass because it's controversial. That's not.
Isn't it just an abstention then, or, I mean, they're required?
When you have a conflict of interest, you abstain.
Right. You don't just not vote, you still abstain. It still becomes a record. And I don't see it up there, but.
Well, and then you're allowed to be part of the discussion, I don't think.
Yeah, that's what this next paragraph. No council member who is disqualified by reason of conflict of interest shall engage in discussion and debate, nor vote upon the matter in which the matter is disqualified. You will state that openly and have the presiding officer announce the fact and nature of such conflict of interest in open meeting and not subject to further inquiry. Where no clearly disqualifying conflict of interest appears, the matter of disqualification may, at the request of the member affected, be decided by the other members of the council. So they say, well, I'm not sure if it is or isn't. And then they will decide that.
Clay, you did one.
Oh, yeah, I pushed back whenever.
Yeah.
He didn't vote at all.
No. In fact, I think you walked out of the room.
You shouldn't vote.
When we had the discussion.
You're not supposed to vote. That's what I'm saying. And you don't take part in discussion. I've seen councilmen, I had it happen in Marion. Council members got involved in the discussion, was trying to encourage people to vote one, but then when it came to voice, I abstained because of a conflict of interest. No, you should keep quiet. Announce it if I have a conflict of interest on this matter, and and I have seen council members just leave the room, like you said, or at the very least, keep quiet at the meeting on that agenda item.
So if that happens, do we have the right to drop that, item from the agenda? Because they were being persuaded.
Oh, I would defer to your attorney about that.
I don't know if I understand your question.
If you didn't tell that you were not going to vote, but you started persuading us to vote one way.
Yeah.
Like the guy did there in Marion, and then, yeah.
Well, that's the reason, but you announce it publicly at the beginning, right? As soon as the mayor and presiding officer, okay, now we're going on item 6, which is whatever purchase of, you state right at the beginning, I'm not participating in the debate, I'm not going to participate in the vote because I have a conflict of interest. You put it in the minutes.
Yeah, that's the only one, the last one that I remember.
But you did state that happened at Marion.
Yes,
So
but we didn't have that rule.
Okay.
Well, that's really state statute that gets us there, isn't it?
Well, after that happened, we changed everything. You don't participate
In the discussion.
So Jeff, I've seen discussion many times over the years of if somebody abstains, that's automatically a no, or it's automatically a yes, or, just the quorum numbers. Do we need to address that here, how that vote
No,
is
that's
handled?
covered by state law.
Is it?
If it's a bona fide abstention due to conflict of interest, and that can affect your quorum, but that's all spelled out in state law.
Okay.
And the one thing is, if you think you have a potential conflict, check with the city attorney in advance.
That's why you've seen me push back so quick and readily, is because I talked with David before I have issues of conflict.
We've
where
had
we're
discussions
bidding.
over different things too, so.
Jeff, that last sentence seems a little odd to me. Is that a fair way to dispose of a potential conflict of interest? Is have the other members?
Yeah, I
Of the
got that
council
from some other
decide?
city. I debated whether to put it on there or not. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the rest of the council is really qualified to make that decision. I mean, you really need to know what's in the state law.
And may not have all the information either.
Right.
So eliminate that last one.
I can sure eliminate that.
Where no clearly disqualifying conflict of interest appears.
Yeah, I wrestled with that.
Should there be a statement where council members who believe they have a conflict of interest are encouraged to contact the city
Yeah,
attorney
that'd be fine.
Yeah, we can sure,
to discuss
something like
that
that. Sounds good.
conflict?
Yeah.
we've kind
That
of
would be
just,
the alternate to this last sentence.
Yeah.
well, you just, you know, you go, when newly elected members come in, we try and get them to those voter meetings, and you get that information there, but if for some reason or other, an individual does not get that, at least we've got something in our rules.
Well, maybe the law has changed, but that was where I've heard a lot of that discussion about how that vote is counted and stuff, was at the Iowa League of
League of
Cities.
City, yeah.
So,
Might have been.
Okay? So council members who believe they may have a conflict of interest are encouraged to consult with the city attorney prior to the meeting. And just a few special motions, there's a lot more in the Robert's rules, but I thought this was, at least these I thought were important to include in the council rules of procedure. Waiver of ordinance reading, and that's in the state code, that just I thought would be good, especially for citizens to look at it. Council member may move to suspension rules call for final passage of an ordinance with waiver of first or second consideration or both, consistent with applicable state law, and that requires a 3/4 vote of all council members, whether present or absent, including vacant positions for passage. And that's taken by roll call and entered on the record. Again, that's just straight out of the state law on that. Reconsideration of actions taken. Again, I don't know what your policies have been in the past. In most cities, if you say, when I say, do we understand what I'm talking about when I say reconsideration? Council acts on something tonight, and you have maybe it's a split vote, or some people are absent. In most places, most of them allow for a reconsideration of that vote, but it has to be at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And the motion for reconsideration and the second has to be made by somebody who was on the prevailing side. So whether it was 4-2 vote to approve or 4-2 vote to deny, it's whoever was on the prevailing side has to make the motion. If they were absent at the meeting, that's considered on the prevailing, they were basically a no vote. Okay?
so is this an exception to the rule that you can't take any action on items that aren't on the agenda, because this wouldn't be an agenda item?
That's a good point. I have seen cities where, again,
Well, it would have to come on the agenda.
For the next
a
agenda.
council member
Doesn't
would
state
let
it, though.
the mayor know, or city manager, I want to make a motion to reconsider. It probably should be on the agenda
It should be on the agenda for that meeting.
for that meeting, that's
Well,
correct.
that again goes to, hey, if you and Misty want to come forward and put an agenda item, if you were in the prevailing of the four that said yes, you two came forward and said, we want to see this reconsidered. You could do that because we have that rule in the back that said earlier that council members can put stuff on the agenda.
Right.
Well, we put it as 3, but, so you'd have to convince someone else, but.
Jeff, did you say the council member seconding the motion also has to be from the previous majority?
That's how I understand it.
Okay. Or is it just the council person making the motion?
Didn't we just have something like that not too long ago? Was that like last June or July? We did a reconsideration of something?
I would
I
suggest,
did not, I think you ran the meeting because I was gone.
I must have screwed it up.
No, that's not what
I don't remember.
I thought there was
I don't
something we had to
recall that.
reconsider.
here's what I
Yeah,
would
we
say,
have to
checking with Robert's rules,
reconsider.
you might want to just double check that, does the person who seconds it also have to, I know the person who makes the motion has to be.
I know what it was.
prevailing
It was,
side.
I remember
I
what it
can't
was.
remember.
It was, the newspaper wanted to do that video page.
Oh, that, yeah.
And we had to reconsider doing that.
So
That's what it was.
that rescinded the prior motion, is that right? Do you
Yes.
remember, Mike? We had that happen many years ago.
That was
I
actually
think
on
we
a
put it
consent
on
agenda.
a
We
consent
pulled it out,
agenda, we
and
did that.
pulled it out.
Right.
You make the
I think we
motion
left
to
it on
reconsider at the
consent
next meeting. That does not mean you have to have the vote on the main motion at that meeting. You could defer, say, well, we'll have a motion to reconsider at the meeting on June 1st.
So it would go on, you would put it in as an agenda item to reconsider the action taken at the previous meeting.
That has to be the next meeting.
That'd have to be at the next meeting, and
But
then
you
the
don't have to
following.
vote on, now, that motion to reconsider may or may not pass. But if
Oh.
it passes, you know, if it fails, then you don't have another vote.
Vote, right, you're done.
Right.
But the item would then have to come back up at the next meeting on the next agenda. So you're actually 2 meetings after the fact.
Potentially, yeah.
So, okay.
And once the matter has been reconsidered, no motion for further
You get that?
reconsideration shall be made without unanimous consent of the council.
Yeah, because I was questioning how we,
This is where
We
that
had-
sergeant at arms comes into play, some of the stuff, I think.
because then there was so much discussion about it, then Doug sent the letter to pull back and say, no, I don't want to do this. And then, so then I guess to me, I thought it was appropriate we had to take that action away then. And then we just put it on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Now, this item in red, this has happened in another case, I added it. The issue was, in that particular community, council made a decision, it was a split vote, and they couldn't let it go, they kept talking about it, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. Not so much motion reading, it always just was brought up for discussion, nobody's position changed. What they ended up doing was, they have adopted as one of these rules, that once the time limit for reconsideration is expired, that item is not going to be placed on a council agenda within 12 months after the initial vote. Unless significant new information has been brought to the attention of the council and without unanimous consent of the council. Once you've acted on it, you're done with it.
Right, it should be finished.
Now, again, there may be new information that's been brought to your attention, that would be a different story. Are you okay with that?
12 months seems like a long time to me.
Well, that's what they,
Yeah, that's
I have to do is say within the calendar year, but you say, well, we just talked about it in December, November, calendar, that's only 1 month.
Well, the big thing that could happen is a changeover of council. You vote on something in December, and then
Yeah, that's
the
true.
public changes who's on the council, and the next thing they want to do is,
They want that item back on the agenda.
yeah, they won't be able to.
Right.
Until they change the rule.
Or enough information comes up.
See, it's within 12 months unless significant new information. So you could essentially, if new information came up in a month, you could do it before the 12 months.
But there
that-
also has to be unanimous consent
And
of
then the-
council.
Correct.
It says and.
And unanimous.
Why the push for 12 months? Where did 12 months come from? Why?
That's just
That's just what that city did.
See, I think that's a long time too.
Or you could say within 12 months or after a city council election, we could add that to the, or an intervening city council election. But I think Jerry's point is a good point. You know, that may be a big,
About within 6 months.
Could be the reason they got voted out.
could be.
Or we did. I should say in this case.
Was that passed muster?
Are we okay with that?
Or intervening?
That could be more than 12 months, depending
be.
on when the,
It's either or.
Yeah, you're right.
12 months
It'd be
or.
12
Whichever
months
comes
or
first.
less.
Right.
And you could have an intervening special election too.
Mhm.
It may not necessarily be the November
Right.
odd number year election. General
Usually
election.
6 months.
That's what I was thinking, just go 6 months.
Well, that's what I first thought was 6
Yeah.
months would be a little.
Yeah, make it,
At least that, Yeah,
What do you think about
Some
6
cooling off
months?
time without.
Yeah.
right.
That's what I
I
said.
think 6 months is enough for cooling, yeah.
Put 6 on it.
We okay with 6 months?
I am.
6 months or intervening city council election, or just leave it at 6
Will you
months?
just take that back out?
The 6 months should cover it for me.
Keep it. Okay. Motion to suspend the rules, that's debatable, requires 2/3 vote of those present to pass. So the council can suspend your rules, so it's not like an ordinance necessarily. We give you that opportunity to do that. And motion to adjourn or motion to recess, their motions are not debatable. When a motion is made, you immediately, the presiding officer immediately calls for a vote. Okay? So if somebody says motion to adjourn, you have a vote. Doesn't mean it can be approved. Adjourn is, you're done for the night. Recess is just like we just did a few minutes ago. Recess for a few minutes. Telephonic participation in meetings, I assume this is something you've probably done already. Council member physically unable to attend a meeting, council meeting may participate by phone. Do you use Skype? Or just phone?
Haven't yet.
Just fine.
Don't use Skype. It's notoriously unreliable for these type of meetings, my experience. The absent member has to have a legitimate reason for not attending. Mere inconvenience or mere convenience is not a legitimate reason. So I guess you want to stay home and watch Iowa in the NCAA Final Four, that's not a legitimate reason.
No, it has to be Iowa State.
Either one are gonna happen.
And the presiding officer will decide is that a legitimate reason. You have to have a telephone speaker system, that's state law, and that permits everybody in council and in attendance to hear, and also hear the vote of the absent member. And also the absent member has to be able to hear what's going on in the meeting.
So, Jeff, so when someone has electronic voting, how does that person vote in abstention then?
Oh, I don't know.
Because they don't have to physically be here to push the button,
Yeah.
Doesn't apply, move
We don't have to worry.
so they don't get a vote.
on. Bring us back.
They might not be able to, I don't know. I hadn't thought about that.
Go back the old way.
But what you can't do is have the mayor on the phone with the person who's absent and say, oh yeah, Joe votes yes.
Yeah, Joe votes yes. No, I didn't. No,
So everybody's got to hear Joe vote yes.
But that's why the need for the single speaker in the room, where they could say yes or no.
Exactly.
But so how do they get away with the electronic voting?
I don't know, I'll have to find out.
The policy amendment would have to cover it.
Somebody'd have to be there to push the button.
Good
Probably
point.
have a
City
rule that
attorney.
says the city
City
attorney.
attorney pushes the button.
Okay, this next one,
Not to ask that.
Or
you
they
may or
vote.
may not even want to have, I know this was an issue in several cities, and where,
Sit by your meter.
what happened was,
I don't blame you.
the mayor or maybe the city manager didn't want to sit next to somebody. And they moved the nameplates around. And the council member got really upset. Who decides who sits where? And
I think the mayor's been doing that.
and that's how this is worded, is the mayor makes that decision.
You
So
guys
what you-
comfortable with where you're sitting?
Not that this would happen here,
Yeah.
but there was one council member just was nonstop yakking to the whole meeting. And nobody wanted to sit next to him or her. And it was and they kept moving that person around.
Person's no longer on the council.
I think it's just good to have a rule, the mayor gets to decide who sits where.
Can the mayor have duct tape?
Mayor has point of order.
Administrative staff, city employees addressing council. Of course, I would assume you have the staff also seek recognition by the presiding officer before speaking, just like the council. The question here is, Staff may respond to questions or comments by council or members of the public with permission of the presiding officer, and shall always do so in a polite and tactful manner. I have been I've been involved in myself. If somebody in the audience wants to get into a fight or an argument with a staff person, the discussion should be directed to the council and especially to the presiding officer, not back and forth in the audience. Now, maybe the audience member has a legitimate question, council wants to know the answer to it. But that should be the presiding officer, mayor, or council say, hey, we want to hear what the answer is, but not get into an argument at the meeting. You okay with that?
I guess I would like the word respectful instead of tactful, but
Oh.
I guess I would prefer respectful. Sorry, I guess I feel that to me that carries a little more weight.
Okay? Members of the public addressing the council. You've had on your agenda a time when citizens can address the council, I know that. And you do that, they do that during the oral requests and communications portion of the agenda. And that's for items not on the printed agenda, is that correct?
Correct.
Or, of course, or public hearing portions that are entitled to speak. An audience member desiring to address the council shall stand and wait to be recognized by the presiding officer. You want them to come to the dais? Stand and approach the dais. Maybe what you say, instead of standing, approach the dais.
The what?
Dais?
Good word.
Podium?
Podium?
Or ambo, if that's what they call it in Holy Spirit.
I don't care what you call it. And you wait to be wait to be recognized by the presiding officer. You want them, I assume, to state their name and address for the record, right? Do you require them to give their address?
Name, we've not ever said address, but I'm okay with address. I don't have a problem with it.
I mean, I don't care, it's
Just
just,
to make sure there's
An
still.
address is
Well,
nice
yeah,
at times,
good
though.
idea.
that's pretty standard to ask for the address.
If they don't live here.
Right, they might not
Yeah.
live in another town.
All remarks, questions should be addressed to the presiding officer and not to any individual council member, staff member, or any other persons. Kind of same thing we were talking about before. Persons should not engage individual council members or staff in a discussion except as permitted by the presiding officer. Person recognized to speak should maintain courteous and polite demeanor, as well as refrain from using inappropriate, combative, profane, or abusive language, or attacking the character of city officials and employees in a personal manner. You okay with that? And I borrowed that from some other city. No person shall enter into discussions without being recognized by the presiding officer. That's meant getting people in the audience. No,
Can we back up to 3, because this was from my question from earlier. So should we at the council, we have to ask for the mayor's permission in this case to respond to that person?
that would be my opinion, yes.
Or I would probably, if I felt that was getting a little out of hand, I'd probably tell them that enough's enough, but I would probably ask you as a council person, do you wish to respond? And you could say yea or nay.
Okay.
That would probably be what I would do as I read through this. I would take it upon myself to ask you if you wanted to respond to it, yes or no, and then if you say no, we're moving on. Because I don't,
But
right.
if Joe's up there yakking and I just want to interject?
Then I think you have to come back to the presiding officer the way it's up
Yeah,
there.
you should get the
Yeah.
presiding officer's
Which we
permission.
haven't been doing.
No, we haven't.
No, we've been very respectful in allowing those people to speak.
And what you don't want to do, I wouldn't put it in the rules of procedure, but don't get into an argument, especially a public hearing. You know, that's the public's opportunity to state their opinion on a matter. I've seen councilmen start arguing with people, even if now, if there's something that's absolutely factually wrong, I mean, certainly, councilman can ask staff person or whoever to state the factual information, but don't argue with people.
My suggestion would be, rather than asking if the person wants to respond or not, and putting them on the spot, is let the council member say, may I respond to that?
That's, okay.
So,
Okay?
Well, put the onus on whether or not you want to respond.
right.
Well, here's where I put that. No public member shall be allowed to speak more than once on any one subject until every other person, public member choosing to speak has spoken. Now, the one problem with it, especially if you have like a zoning case, where you may have a developer or engineer represent, and there may be a lot of questions, maybe the developer may need to speak several times if people have questions about, and maybe we just say, without the consent of the presiding officer. After a motion has been made, or after a public hearing has been closed, no audience or staff member shall address the council without first securing permission from the presiding officer. Hope you're in agreement with that. And then here's that question of time limit for citizen presentations. We added that in public hearings. Did you want to have a time limit just for citizen presentations in general? 5 minutes or whatever? Or take it out, whether, again, I don't know if that's an issue with your citizen presentations, whatever you call it, or discussions on, agenda items. Again, I think Mike's point about having the rules in advance is a good one. You want that or not?
So like, I'll throw out 20 minutes.
Not per person.
No, not per person, just in totality for the presentation. Some of those presentations can get a little long.
Formal
If it's-
presentations limited to 20 minutes, verbal presentations 5.
Except for this presentation.
Well, then we
Well,
could
this
get
isn't a
into,
presentation, this is more of a workshop.
I mean,
But I-
isn't this regarding citizen comments?
Yeah,
Is
this
this
is going back to
particular
that
one?
oral requests and communications. I don't want them coming up here and setting up a slideshow, and the next thing you know, we're watching something for 20, 30 minutes, or, an hour. That doesn't make sense.
Well, and I had,
Or,
what I phrase, a person recognized the speech should make his or her statement in question preferably as brief as possible, taking no more than 5 minutes or whatever number you want to put in there.
5 seems like enough to me.
I agree
Okay.
with that.
Okay? We're okay with that?
I think in the ones that we've had, Mark Beardmore came forward a while back, but then when the whole thing clear back when the presentation was made by Carroll Commercial Savings Bank, I remember he was kind of respectful. I think most people are respectful when they come in, and I don't want to take up much of your time, but here's this project.
And we could say with
So-
5 minutes without the consent of the presiding officer, we could add that in there. Because sometimes there may be a reason why it's longer.
Additional time may be
Right.
permitted by the presiding officer.
That makes sense to me, yeah.
Okay? Persons may address the council for reading a protest petition, communications relating to any matter over which the council has jurisdiction. When anyone appears before the council stating he or she has a petition or written communication, presiding officer will accept the document, and the minutes will reflect that act. I didn't know, that may go to city clerk as opposed to the presiding officer. The first part of it, that's the Iowa city rule. The council gets involved in all sorts of things and knows nothing with city business. Nuclear test ban treaty, or, it could be anything. The idea is you're going to accept petitions and stuff dealing with city business, right? You want the communications to go to the presiding officer or the city clerk? Does it matter?
City clerk.
Laura?
Julie? Okay.
Okay,
She doesn't want us to lose it, Mr. Mayor.
By saying the person should not address the council on issues that are known to be outside the responsibility or authority of the city of Carroll. Individual council members, here you go, may ask questions or engage in conversation with the public audience only when recognized by the presiding officer. However, council members may, in their individual discretion, make themselves available to persons attending the meeting before or after the council meeting. So, it may be you say, Bill, let's talk about it after the meeting. In the alley. Order and decorum. Any of the following shall be sufficient cause at the direction of the presiding officer to remove any person from council chambers or meeting hall for the duration of the meeting. Unreasonably loud or disruptive language, noise, or conduct which obstructs the work or conduct of the business of the council. And I just added, some cities have this rule, and I don't know if you do, no clapping, chanting, booing, or similar types of outbursts by the audience. Willful injury or furnishings or the interior of the council chamber. Refusal to obey the rules of conduct, including limitations on occupancy and seating capacity. Refusal to obey an order of the presiding officer or an order approved by the majority of the council present. Before a person is removed, the presiding officer should give that person a warning to cease his or her conduct. If a meeting is disrupted by members of the audience, presiding officer or majority council president may order the council chambers of their meeting hall to be clear. You okay with that?
On B, there's injury, the right word. Injury,
Damage, yeah,
Damage?
yeah.
willful damage, that's true. Good catch.
That's fine.
Damage or furnishing, yeah. Injury occurs to a human.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
This next one, I defer to Dave. I got that from another city. If the council takes an action inconsistent with these rules but in compliance with the applicable sections Iowa Code, and if the action is taken without objection by the council member, the action taken shall be deemed lawful and official action of the council. I don't know why that's there. I don't know, but that's just more for your review. I don't know if that's needed or not. Council can amend these rules by majority vote at a meeting in which all council members are present. I think that's important. You don't want to just have two people absent and start changing the rules on them. And I suggest rules should be, at a minimum, reviewed every 2 years.
Well,
You may want to coincide with the election cycle.
so amendment of the rules would have to occur as an agenda item on a meeting, correct?
Oh, sure, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. It is the duty of the presiding officer to enforce the rules. These rules are intended to supplement, and shall be interpreted to conform with the statutes of the state of Iowa and the ordinances of the city of Carroll, Iowa. If there's anything inconsistent with Iowa law, that provision will be stuck. The Iowa law, of course, governs. I'm suggesting the city attorney shall be the parliamentarian who can, and final authority on any question. The presiding officer will make rulings, but it can be appealed to the parliamentarian. That's typically how it's done. And then just the last thing. Some cities actually have a city council code of ethics. Above and beyond what's in the Iowa code. I'm not recommending it, I thought I just ought to raise it. That's another subject for another whole long meeting. I don't know if it's necessary or needed. I got several examples. I think some cities gone way overboard on some of this stuff, but is this something?
The Iowa law already addresses that.
It does. I mean, the Iowa law is kind of vague on some things, but, you know, some cities actually have a code of ethics. Take an extreme example, is a council member can't talk to any staff member directly without going through the city manager. I mean, there's just a lot of things. Is that, I'm just raising it. Is it something you even want to look at doing? I don't suggest. doing it tonight by any means. I would say,
Any thoughts?
I think first steps first.
I
I'd say leave it go.
We're a small town atmosphere.
Yeah,
I
Ankeny got
think we
a
need it
big long.
myself.
I think we is-
Ankeny or Urbandale, I can't remember.
Well, when I worked in Ankeny, that was a dead rule. Council member called you as a staff member, thank you, click. Better, your next call better be the city manager. I don't subscribe to that, I think that's,
I mean, I think we have a hierarchy of, you know, who the city manager's in charge of. We're not in charge of the city staff. I mean, if I have a problem with staff, I go to mine. And I thought that kind of spells it out, some of the stuff that we've got, I thought, from what I was reading, our policies and procedures. So,
I think we do good.
Is there anything missing in all of this? It's a lot of stuff. What I'll do is I will send my notes, I'll try to clean it up a little bit and send it to Mike, and then recommend that Mike and Dave review it carefully, and there may be some, I know there'll be some wordsmithing that's going to be needed for checking out some things.
And certainly if there are wordsmiths people see right now, we're open to that. I don't guarantee this will be back at the next meeting, but we'll work to clean it up, polish it, and then get it to you guys in a future meeting.
So at that meeting, we would have the discussion, go review it. If there's changes that need to be made, we can make them then. We would have to do that all.
Yep.
Correct. Then we could vote on that as the rules at that time. Okay. Or whenever.
And we may just bring it back for a discussion item and bring it back even at a future meeting. I mean, there's no rush on this.
Right.
Yeah, the important thing to remember is it's not the Bible. You can change it
Right.
and experience, trial and error, what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be improved upon. That's why you want to periodically review it. And then the main thing is, not the main thing, but also you get new people get elected to council, make sure they're briefed, oriented on what's in these rules so they understand how that works.
Yeah, I got one for us. I don't know if this falls in under our discussion or not. We may have to bring it back around another point. Our code books that we have as council people, that thing's darn near obsolete to me. I reference the online version of that. If whoever gets mine's gonna get a really ugly, big, thick stack of stuff that's probably gonna have to be edited to see what has gotten in there and what hasn't. And quite frankly, I just throw it in there with it and I don't put it in. Sorry.
What?
Right?
You don't open it up and make sure the debate.
See?
Oh.
I know, right? I'm the only one.
Just electronically.
That's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're not using them and you don't care to have them, please return them. and
Just
we'll
give
take
them
care of
back, yeah.
okay, well, yeah, I know we're supposed to
We'll
pass
go
them
through
on
it.
to the next person, so
We'll take them back though.
I'll bring it to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? If not, I'll need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Dirk?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Fleishner?
Yes.
Bates? Yes. Pat?
Thank you.